In this tutorial we are going to be learning how to crochet a ripple blanket. This is an easy pattern suitable for beginners as you only need to know chain stitch and double crochet. That's double crochet using American crochet terms. The same stitch is known as a treble in the UK. You can use absolutely any yarn and hook that you want for this blanket, and I'll write out about the yarn and hook that I'm using in the video description in case you're interested. Let's get crocheting. So for the ripple blanket we're going to need to make one long starting chain along one side of our blanket, and I recommend doing this starting chain in a hook size bigger than the hook you're planning on using for the rest of the blanket. So I'm using a sport weight yarn and a 3.75mm hook for the bulk of the blanket, but for just the starting chain only I'm going to be using a 4mm hook. If you're using a different size hook, just go up one hook size. To make your starting chain, start with a slip knot using your preferred method. This is how I prefer to make my slip knots. And then we're going to make a chain for one side of the blanket. This chain needs to be slightly longer than you want the width of your blanket to be, and it also needs to be a multiple of 12 stitches plus an additional 4. So for the blanket that I showed in the introduction of this video, I did a starting chain of 144 plus an extra 4, so in total 148 stitches. I'm just going to be making a small sample for this tutorial, so I have done a chain of 28 stitches. Now before we start row 1, remember to swap down to the hook that you want to use for the rest of your blanket. So to start row 1, make a double crochet in the 4th chain from your hook. So 1, 2, 3, 4, so I'm making a double crochet into this chain here. There's my first double crochet, and this chain 3 here counts as the first double crochet stitch. Now work 1 double crochet into each of the next 4 chains. So now you should have 6 double crochet if we include that starting chain of 3 as our first double crochet. To make the actual ripple shape of the blanket, we're going to be doing decreases at sort of the top of the hill of that ripple, and then if you think of it like a hill and a valley shape, so at the top of this hill we're going to be doing increases, and at the bottom of the valley we're going to be doing decreases, and I am going to show you how to do these if you've not done them before. So we're now going to do a decrease stitch, and specifically the stitch we're going to do is called a double crochet 3 together. It's abbreviated in patterns as a DC3 tog. Now, if you're a beginner and that sounds really complicated, don't worry, it's not as complicated as it sounds, and I'm going to take you through it slowly step by step. So first, yarn over, and then put your hook into the next chain. Yarn over and pull up a loop. Now yarn over and pull through 2 loops, and then we're going to stop. So what we've actually done is we've made a double crochet stitch here, but we've not done that final yarn over and pull through to complete the double crochet stitch. What we've made instead is something called a partial double crochet, and we're going to repeat this into the next 2 chains. So I'm leaving those 2 loops on my hook, yarn over and put your hook into the next chain, yarn over and pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through 2 loops. You should now have 1, 2, 3 loops on your hook. Now we're going to make another partial double crochet into the next chain. So yarn over, put your hook into the next chain, yarn over and pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through 2 loops. So I've now got 4 loops on my hook, and I've worked 3 partial double crochets into 3 different chains. So now to finish off this double crochet 3 together stitch, yarn over and pull through all 4 loops on the hook. So that was a double crochet 3 together stitch. We've done a decrease here because we've taken 1, 2, 3 stitches at the bottom, and at the top there's only 1 stitch. If you want to see that decrease stitch again, you can slow down and rewind this video. Next, double crochet in the next 4 stitches. We're now at the top of the hill of our ripple stitch. So here we're going to make an increase. And to make an increase in crochet, it's really easy. We just crochet 3 double crochets all into the same chain. So let's do that together. So we're going to work 1 double crochet into the next chain. Then a double crochet back into that same chain. So I'm going back in there. And then again I'm going to make another double crochet back into that same chain, so I'm putting my hook in back into that chain again. And that was our increase. We've turned 1 chain into 3 stitches, and to get that ripple effect we just, on future rows, we stack all the increases up on top of each other and all the decreases up on top of each other, and I am going to show you what it looks like as your blanket gets bigger. So now we're going to continue in this stitch pattern all the way along until the end of your chain by working 4 double crochets, then that decrease stitch, that double crochet 3 together stitch over the next 3 chains. So I make a partial double crochet in the next chain, a partial double crochet in the next chain again, and 1 last partial double crochet in the chain after that. Then yarn over and pull through all 4 loops on the hook, and that's our decrease done. Now work 4 double crochet, so 1 into each of the next 4 chains, and then you'd work 3 double crochet into the chain after that to continue that ripple pattern, and continue that all the way along until you reach the end of your chain, and then come back to this tutorial. So I've continued that stitch pattern until the end of my chain, and I have just done 4 double crochets after one of those decreases, and you should, if you've done that stitch count of 12 plus 4, you should also be at the same point in the stitch repeat. So I've got 1 chain left, and into that final chain we're going to crochet 2 double crochets. So 1, 2. So I forgot to say when I was filming, but your stitch count at the end of every row of this blanket should be 3 stitches less than your starting chain, so a multiple of 12 plus 1. So my starting chain was 148 stitches, and every row of my blanket has 145 stitches. So just in case you want to check your stitch count, make sure it is that number. Okay, let's get back to the tutorial for row 2. So for row 2, the row I'm going to show you next, we're actually going to be repeating row 2 over and over and over again until we have finished our blanket. So to start row 2, chain 3, and if you're wanting to change colours here, I will show you this at the end of row 2. So just for now, chain 3 in the same colour, and then turn your work over so you're working from the back, just like working rows in crochet. Now work a double crochet into that first stitch, so not into any of those chains, into the first stitch, because that chain 3 counts as our first double crochet. So now work a double crochet into each of the next 4 stitches, and after I've done these 4 stitches I am going to start speeding up these sections just so this video doesn't get longer than it needs to be. So now we've worked those 4 double crochets, we're at one of those valleys at the bottom of the ripple. So we need to do a double crochet 3 together stitch. So again, work a partial double crochet into each of the next 3 stitches. It's exactly the same as we did on row 1. Yarn over, pull through all 4 loops. So there's our decrease stitch. Then work a double crochet into the next 4 stitches. We're now at the top of the ripple, so the top of that hill, so we're going to work an increase, so work 3 double crochets all into the next stitch. Now repeat that stitch pattern we've just done across the whole of the rest of this row. So work a double crochet into each of the next 4 stitches, then a decrease, and then a double crochet into each of the next 4 stitches and an increase. So yeah, keep repeating that across to the end of the row, and then come back and meet me at the end of the row and I'll show you how we change colour. So I've continued working that stitch pattern to the end of my row, and my final stitch is this starting chain here. And for the final part of row 2, work 2 double crochets into the top of that starting chain. So in that space there, bring it up a little bit closer to the camera for you. So yeah, work 2 double crochets in there. And now fasten off in the way that you normally would, and then we're going to add a new colour of yarn. So here is what my little bit of crochet is looking at the end of row 2, and you can see that ripple pattern starting to take shape. You need to be careful when you're working subsequent rows that you're always putting decreases on top of decreases and increases on top of increases. So if you accidentally do a decrease here, your crochet will end up straight and not in that lovely wavy ripple pattern. So I have fastened off my old colour, and then I'm going to join this colour to continue on with the ripple pattern. So first we're going to turn our crochet over because we're going to be turning over at the end of each row because we're working in rows. So to add a new colour of yarn, we're going to ignore this green tail here. I'm going to pick up my orange tail and then put my hook into the top of that first stitch of the row. Now lay that new colour of yarn across your hook, grab it with your hook and pull it through to create your first loop. Now I like to crochet over the top of my ends as I go, so I'm actually going to take this yarn tail and lay it across next to where I'm going to be crocheting the next part of the row. So now chain 3. That counts as your first double crochet stitch, and then we continue crocheting the same as round 2. So a double crochet into the same stitch, and then a double crochet into each of the next 4 stitches. So now continue working your rows and changing colours until your blanket is the length that you want it to be. Give me a thumbs up if you've made it to the end of this tutorial and you're well on your way to making a ripple blanket. I'll pop up some playlists on the screen now for you to watch next, and I hope I'll see you next time.